Hello everybody. So this is going to be our second day, and then today we are going to learn a little bit of navigation within SAP screens, how to navigate between different transactions, how the data flows between different screens, how we can check the data in a database table, and then little bit about SAP community network, which is going to be very helpful going forward. So the first step would be to request for a password reset using this link which you would have received in your email. I have already requested for a password reset and I have received my new password. So I'll go to my SAP logon pad. By the way, if in case you have not yet configured the mini SAP in your logon pad, so here is the configuration detail. I have also posted this on my Facebook page. So I'll double click on this. My ID is developer. Hit enter. So this is our first instance when we get into SAP. So this is a very general screen, as I told earlier. This portion is dedicated to the company or the client. Here they can put their details. This is fully customizable, and this particular portion again it's customizable. You can just add your favorite transactions here. For example, already few transactions are added. It's SAP app editor and function model, so we will go through it one by one, so don't worry about it for now. Then there is a very important community which exists, and then you will be able to find a lot of solutions to your SAP related problems. The link is scn.sap.com. so it's SAP community network. So go to this website, navigate around, have a look, create your login credentials, and then try to go through the ABAP community. Here you'll find many people who voluntarily provide solution to different problems based on their expertise and experience. Even I have been getting a lot of help through this website. So again, just make a note of it. It's scn.sap.com. And before we actually go to the navigation, let me give you some other details about how SAP earns the money from this product. So when I logged in, you'd have seen that there was a pop-up mentioning that the license is about to expire. This pop-up. So this is something I got on a trial basis. So you can also request for this by changing different email IDs. You can keep on requesting, and you can then have the access working fine for you. But in a normal scenario, when SAP delivers the product, the customer is expected to buy a license key, and then they need to key in that license key into their SAP, and that's how SAP is going to work properly. So let's see how the license works actually. There is a transaction called SU01. This transaction is basically related to the user details. For example, my user ID is developer, so I give my user ID as developer. Hit on this display button. You'll find all the details related to this user ID: last name, first name, the format which they are following, phone number. Not all the fields would be mandatory. They have mentioned the company details also. Again, it will vary from client to client. This is the logon data. You'll see a lot of details. Unsecure logon not allowed. Again, if you see, already the date format is already predefined here. So this is generally done considering the country and the regions, and then what kind of date format they want to follow. For example, in India they follow DD, MM, and then YYYY format. In US they follow MMDD, YYY format. So this can be defaulted here. Decimal notations also, at few regions they use a comma instead of a dot, and other way around. If you see output device, it's showing as local, but then if any printer is configured, that can be shown here. So as of now, no printer is configured. Leave this parameter roles and profile. Don't worry about it, it's all related to security. So this is your license data. So it's SAP NetWeaver developer. So this particular user developer is registered as a NetWeaver developer. So through this you can find out the details of a particular user. And then this particular transaction, again SU01, this transaction is responsible for various other admin related tasks like locking or unlocking a user ID, changing the password, changing the details of a user, creating a new user, deleting an existing user, or copying a new user from the existing user. Again, these tasks are related to a security consultant, not a ABAP consultant, but still it's good to have a knowledge on that. If you see here, we have different buttons. For example, I again open this SU01. So these buttons are now active. If I go inside, again you will see that these buttons are active. If you put your cursor on a particular button, it says back, exit, cancel. Now you try to understand the function of these buttons. When I'm pressing back, it goes to the previous screen. When I'm pressing exit, it again goes to the previous screen. When I'm pressing cancel, it again goes to the previous screen. So somebody might ask that why do we have these three buttons when the function is same? So answer would be that this is the way this transaction is designed. So while designing the transaction, the controls of these buttons were decided that it will always throw you back to the previous screen. It won't kick you out of the transaction. But we will try to go to some other transaction. So this is a very important transaction, SE38. SE38 is related to your ABAP editor. ABAP editor is nothing but the place where you are going to write your first program. So we still have some time, but we'll try to open a program here. Let's say G-test. There might be an existing program with name G-test. I'll hit on change. So this is the place where you are going to write your code, and this is a sample code. Just forget about this code for now. When I'm hitting on the back button, it comes to the previous screen. When I'm hitting on the exit button, it still comes to the previous screen. When I'm hitting on the cancel button, still comes to the previous screen. So again, this is how these buttons are defined to work. While developing a new report, we will see that how we can control these buttons, and then how we can navigate around different screens based on our choice. So just make a note of it. SE38, that is your ABAP editor. ABAP editor is a place where you'll write your code. Now the other very important transaction is SE11. This transaction is ABAP dictionary. ABAP dictionary is just like your database Bible. All the contents related to your database will be available on SE11 transaction. You can see different options. We have 7 different options here: database table, view, data type, type group, domain, search help, log object. So database table, as the name itself suggests, this is something to take with a table. So please note that there are two concepts here. One is called table, the other is called structure. So the difference between table and structure is table will carry data at runtime, but structure won't carry any data at runtime. For example, we'll go and see if we have any, because this is mini SAP client, it won't have full-fledged data here. This is only for ABAP training. So to access the search help, so here you can see a search help, and this particular piece is basically your search help. So if you want to access a search help, definitely it's going to help you in terms of searching something. You can either click here or you can hit F4 here. So search helps are controlled by F4. So you'll see that it has populated these tables. Now we don't have a lot of tables here because it's mini SAP. It will have very limited functionality. So I'll take a sample table S flight. S flight is a table related to flight data. So what I did, I just entered the table name and then I hit on display. So this is how a table looks like, and then to access the contents of the table you need to click on this button, contents. Once you are on this screen, you can execute this and then you can see the contents of the table. So these are the different kind of fields available in the table. If you see MANDT, I'll let you know about it immediately after 1 or 2 minutes. This is a field called care ID, that is your career ID, con ID, flight date, price, currency, plane type, different fields. And then this particular screen is basically to provide some filters so that data can be restricted. For example, if I try to choose something here that I want to see the data only for American Airlines, I can give the detail here, execute this, and then you'll find the data only for American Airlines. So this is how a database table looks like. These are the fields of the table. We'll talk about it in detail, but this is a very important concept which we should know right away. Is MANDT, that is client. So if you see here, we are working on a client called 500. So this is a client 500. So what is the meaning of this client? This is something related to different kind of or different methods of accessing a server. This could be related to different locations from where the server is getting accessed. This could be related to different security related accesses through which the user access are controlled. It could be anything, it could be based on the requirement, but normally in a typical scenario how it works with the client is we have a development system. Let's say N4S is my development system, and then 500 is the client on which I can do my development. But then to do the testing there would be a separate client, that is, let's say N4S 510, Again, you can choose the client details by clicking here. So for example, I have logged in into 500. You might want to log into 510, though 510 is not available in this system, but you might want to do that. So 510 is something, I would say, let's say a testing client. So 500 is purely development, 510 is purely testing. Now the difference between these two clients would be that 500 won't contain any data, but 510 would contain the data in the database tables. So why we do that? So that let's say somebody is making a change in this client, that is 500, which means somebody is making a change in development client, but then that guy is not having the access to data in this client, because you can consider a scenario wherein somebody runs a wrong transaction, or somebody writes a program which might delete all the data from the database. It could be anything. So a typical intention won't be like that, but it could be done by mistake also. So that's the reason in a typical landscape, developers are advised to write a program in one client and then do the testing in other client. And then also these two boxes are kept separately, because functional guys parallelly can access the other client, which we were just talking about, let's say 510, and then they can create their data, they can test their scenario, and parallelly the ABAP consultant can make the change in the client 500. So it's all about data security, it's all about robustness of the data, it's all about data privacy. So just consider a typical scenario. In your company you have a development server. In that development server, or maybe you have a development client, again the development client is divided into two different clients. One is development, pure development, the other is testing. So the testing client won't have the authorization for development, so you cannot make any change. But these two clients are interconnected or cross client. When I'm saying cross client, it's cross client only for the source code or for the code you have written. It's not cross client for the data. And how this is ensured? This is ensured via this particular field, MANDT. So if you find a table which is having MANDT, it means the data in that table is specific to that particular client. So if I go to this database table and want to access the data, these records are specific to client 500. These records won't exist in any other client. But again, there could be a scenario wherein this field is not there, MANDT. In that case, this data is accessible across all the clients, that is client independent. As of now, this table is client dependent. So if somebody is making a change in client 500 and this MANDT is not there, then that data will automatically be changed in client 510 also. So normally we keep everything as client dependent, except some customizing tables which can be useful in all the clients. So a typical landscape will contain a development server which will have two different clients, a development client and a testing client. Then they will be having a quality server which will again be a separate client. Quality server is as good as a production server. It will be refreshed from a production server, it will be having a lot of data, it will have almost all the scenarios available on the production, or at least it will have as much as possible data from production, copied from production. So normally when you do a development, you do the testing in your testing client, let's say 510. Once the testing is successful, you release your transport. We'll come to the transport later. You release your transport, you request for the changes to move into quality, and then in quality the testing is done by the functional consultant or maybe by the client or the end user. Once they are satisfied, they will move the changes to production. So a typical landscape would be development, quality and production, but it also depends on the complexity of the landscape. It also depends on the budget of the client. It also depends on the scenarios available in the organization, and it also depends on the number of users. So somebody might want to keep a pre-production which is exact replica of production, the refresh of that server could be done maybe on a daily basis or during the weekends, but it would be like an exact replica of the production. We'll call it pre-production. The changes from quality will be moved to pre-production. Again it will be tested there, and then later they will allow it to move to production. It all varies from company to company, organization to organization, their policies, their budget. There could be somebody who will say that I don't need a quality, you can simply do the testing in development itself, and then you can move the changes to production. So it all depends on the client, or it all depends on the person who's owning that SAP license. So this is how a typical database looks like. Now I'll go to data type and hit on F4. You will find different options again. Search for data elements, structures, database tables, table types, views, class. So we'll do it definitely, but for now we'll just go to the structure, because we were talking about table and structure. So I tried to search few structures, but if you see, there are very few structures available in this client because it's a mini SAP client. I'll choose this particular structure, SEL_AUFNR, and then I hit on display. Now this screen will remain as it is. I'll open a new screen, and then please note that you can open up to 6 sessions for one particular user. So I'll show you how to do that. So there is a command called /o, and then you want to call your transaction. So I'm writing here /o SE11. It means it will open this SE11 transaction in a new session. So now if you see, we have 2 sessions here, and then I'll do it again. We have 3 sessions here. I'll do it again. We have 4 sessions here. I'll do it again. 5, 6, 7 so we have 7 sessions open. So probably they have configured this in such a way that there is no restriction on the number of sessions you can open, but in a typical environment you cannot open more than 6 sessions. Probably they would have given the same user ID to different users, so probably everybody can log in at the same time, and they don't want to restrict anybody to do the practice. But please make a note that at one point of time no more than 6 sessions are allowed. We will see that when we will switch from this server to some other server to get into the details of the standard tables provided by SAP. But for now, just have a look at it. This one is a structure, and then we'll go to the table. This one is a table. Now I'll navigate around both the windows, and then you can try to observe the changes between these two, the differences actually. So if you see, we don't have a technical setting in a structure. We don't have indexes in the structure. We don't have this facility to see the contents of that, because that is the difference between a structure and a table. So a table carries a data, but a structure doesn't carry any data. See, the skeleton of both table and structure are same. They will talk about a field and its relevant data element. It could be component and component type, but essentially both are same. But the skeleton might be same, but one carries a data, the other doesn't carry any data. So that is the difference between a table and a structure. Now the other important aspect is MANDT, which I already explained. The table could be a client dependent or independent, but structure, since it doesn't carry any data, client dependency or independency is not required. Now you'll see that we have fields here, and then we have a concept called key field. So key field is basically the combination of the fields based on which the uniqueness of the data is defined. So if I go to this table and if I try to see the content, before that you can see that these three fields are little separate than the rest of the fields. So if you see here, we have these three fields: care ID, con ID and flight date. So the remaining data would actually be dependent on these three fields. So no two set of data with same key field can exist in a database table. Please make a note of it. We have AA001705092012, which means for this date, for this con ID and for this career ID, I cannot have two different prices, because that is how the uniqueness of the data is defined. If you see here, so the dates are varying every day. So basically they are trying to project the price for every day, but the data is unique on each date based on the combination of these three. So this is the concept of key field. And the other aspect of having a key field is that since the data is by default unique based on these three key fields, so SAP generates an indexing on the data based on these three key fields, and that happens by default. So indexing is something which helps in the faster retrieval of the data. So if I go here and then I don't pass any selection criteria on this, it will take some time to retrieve the data. But if I tell this that I want to see the data of AA, that is American Airlines, I hit F8, it will take a little less time. If I go and pass more key fields, that the con ID should be 0017, I hit F8, it will be even faster. And if I provide a date, and execute this, you'll see that I got a unique record very quickly. So that is the utilization of the concept of index. But again, this is something provided by SAP, so there might be a scenario wherein this is not suitable for you. So in that case, you would go and create a secondary index, but secondary index needs to have a lot of consideration, lot of discussion, lot of analysis in terms of getting an approval from the database team, because the concept is whenever there is an index, while saving the data in the database, server will try to keep the data in different formats, which means for now it's keeping the data based on the combination of these key fields, but then somebody might want to say that I need data on the currency basis, which means currency is going to be a secondary key field, or maybe the combination of currency and plain type. So while storing the data in the database, SAP would update that index as well, that secondary index as well, which means when you are entering the data in the database and when you are trying to save the data in the database, it will take some time, and then when you are trying to retrieve the data based on that secondary index, the retrieval would be quick because the data has already been sorted or indexed. Here we have a button for indexes, and if you see, as of now there is no secondary index exists on this table. But let's say you want to create a secondary index based on currency and plain type as we discussed. So to do that, you hit on indexes, come to this create button, create index, give a name GI1, let's say, execute. So it says that no indexes found for table S flight. So there might be some issue with the authorization. So it's not letting us to create an index. Okay, I will switch to a different server tomorrow, and then I'll show you how would we create an index. Now coming to the other part of a table, we have the attributes of a table. If you see, this was created by SAP itself way back in 2002. So this table is supplied as a part of a standard product. This is like a dummy table. Delivery and maintenance, you will find different different options here. Delivery class, so we have an option of application table, customizing table, temporary data, local table, which means customizing table, control table, system table, transportable contents. So again, I'll get into the details tomorrow. And then we have a table view maintenance. So here you can see display and maintenance allowed for this table, and then you see the other option, display and maintenance allowed with restrictions, display and maintenance not allowed. So tomorrow we will discuss into detail on these things, and then we'll try to create a sample database table. We are going to insert the data in the database table. We are going to create some indexes on that, and then we will create a maintenance view. I'll also let you know the importance of a maintenance view. So I think it's good for today. Just try to navigate around your SAP login, try to see what all contents are there in a database table, just explore a little bit more about transaction SE11 and then SU01, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you.